Hello, my name is Everett. This is my studio in Northern California, a little bit west of Sebastopol. That was the ocean. I'm starting out here because quite a bit of my work is done outdoors. Right now it's not so chaotic, but usually there's some paintings out here and some drying apparatuses. And this is where I do almost all my underpainting. And there's one painting here that's cooking now. You can see there's some tools on top of it. I start out quite often with laying down different tools, and it can sometimes it's not just here in this case you have machete, trowel, axe, etc., etc. Sometimes it's table, chairs, garbage cans. Basically, it's the way I begin a painting. It's a way of taking inventory of everything that's around me. I also use the dimensions of the space and the floor, the walls, all these things that I manipulate in such a way as to kind of muffle my own ideas and concepts and allow the space and or rather everything that's present within and around the space to enter the practice in such a way that it really directs me and helps me make decisions. So I'm not sort of putting my autobiographical thumbprint everywhere. So please come in the studio. And it's really usually this roll-up door is up. Now it's a little chilly. And there's this constant, what's really important, a very important theme of my work is this kind of blurring from what is interior, what is exterior, not just in the physical sense, but really in the metaphysical sense. I'm very attracted to this idea of a painting that vacillates between asserting a sense of the inside, or the interland, and then the outside. For me, ideal is a painting that functions with both those energies. And I'll back up a little bit, and I'll just give you a little brief history. I grew up primarily in upstate New York, and lived in the city for a good part of my life, New York City, and Europe, and what I can say is that I didn't become a painter on purpose. I came into painting really through the theater, through dance, through music, and in many ways I still feel that I'm practicing things that I gleaned from those mediums. You can tell I have a hard time standing still. So for me, there's this painting. There is this wonderful possibility to perform, and it's the best kind of performance because it's a performance without an audience. So I can do it. I can do what I need to do, and no one's gonna. And I don't have to worry about people walking out of the theater because they're bored. So that's a very long story cut short about my bio. Anyways, I'm out in California now for almost 10 years, maybe more, maybe a little less. And what has been profoundly important to me is really moving from New York City and having my studio on Canal Street, and then moving out to the West Coast and being kind of knocked over the head by the expanse of space and this radical light that is here. It really took me a couple of years. It happened while I was at the Headlands. I had a residency at the Headlands for a couple of years, and it really dawned upon me that suddenly I realized I was making paintings that were directly related to landscape. And specifically, when I say landscape, for me, that's just kind of the foundation for a particular kind of light. I wouldn't call this landscape paintings, but they are heavily concerned with the way light moves across a horizon, and primarily two phenomena. One, reflectivity, and the other, transparency, which are very kind of everyday, quotidian occurrences. But I find when I zero in on them, and I try to set up a situation on a two-dimensional surface where both of these phenomena are happening at the same time, something very interesting happens. And it's kind of a double whammy, because that situation, that kind of conflict between transparency and reflectivity, set up for me a space in which the painting has the potential to appear. And I use the word appear specifically because for me, a painting can either show itself or it can appear. And I'm more interested in the latter. I'm interested in a situation where the painting is coming forth in a kind of, I was going to say slow, but a very specific speed in which it begins to articulate and then perhaps falls apart, and then rearticulates and then falls apart. So there's this constant metamorphosis going on. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about appearances. The ideal situation for me is a painting that's really stuck, if you will, in that space of constant appearing. And that begins to take on, what's been referred to in the history of painting as autonomy. I think of it more as a kind of individuality, so that it has its own, it makes its own decisions. It changes, almost like the way we do with our moods. But in the painting's case, it has a lot to do with the light in the room, the objects in the room, the bodies in the room, and it's this thing that's constantly in motion and at play. And that's really when, if I'm asked this question, how do I know when a painting is finished? For me, it's very, very clear. It's when that energy shows up, or when the painting asserts that characteristic of that it's arrived in this place of perpetual appearances. So maybe a more simple way is to say it shows up in such a way that I can't really articulate what's happening. And even more so, the best is when it just shows itself as something that's not familiar, that I'm not familiar with, and maybe it's so strong. There's certain paintings that almost it's like they ask me to leave the room. I'm not the author anymore, and for me that's the optimal situation. So the painting that I've submitted to the auction for the ICA is a small 18 by 18 inch painting, and I've only made a few of those. I made 3, and 2 of them I'm keeping. So they're quite special to me, and they come from the same set of paintings that I have had a working title under the umbrella of. The untitled title is Some Days Later. And I won't go off on a story about that. But I'll only say that this painting that I've donated does not have an individual story, because none of my paintings function that way. They all are very much, I think of them sometimes as like this meteorite that spent a long time together and then just exploded and went off in little chunks. and it's one of the little chunks from this meteorite. And pretty soon the rest of these will also break out of the studio. But they all address the same problems, and they are, I think of them as things that have authored each other rather than myself as the artist. So that's the painting. Enjoy.